My name is Edith Gregorios. My grandma Edith, known by me and my siblings as Lola, has been an inspiration to many. Born and raised in the Philippines, she lived through the harsh conditions of a third world country. She sacrificed her home to create a new life in America, and she is here today to tell her story.
That's my husband's favorite song, but I cannot remember the wordings. It's in life in the Philippines as a little girl was hard. Knowing that it's a third world country, it's really hard. But we were surrounded with a lot of family, friends, and extended families. Our grandparents were very supportive, and so are our parents. Cousins and uncles, and all friends, relatives around.
You had a close relationship with your parents and siblings?
We do have even distant relatives. We're close to one another, cousins and third cousins, and down the line, we're all close together.
Do you have a first memory?
Yeah. Let me start with, when I was born. I was born in the Philippines, in a little town of Sinai, Ilocos Sur, in the northern part of Luzon. And I went to school in the local elementary school and high school. 7 years old. I was in first grade. Now this was after the war already. I went to elementary school close by our place. And then I went to high school, which is about a mile away. We walked to and from school every morning, every night, But, it was enjoyable because we know everybody. Everybody takes care of everybody. So we were protected in a way. We only had one school in that vicinity. The school in town proper is where we went.
What did you do when you were in school?
I was a brownie as a young girl in the grade school, and I was always a member of musical contests from first grade up to even high school. And I was also a Girl Scout member. I was softball player. I played a little bit of volleyball.
How important was music to you growing up with your family?
My dad went to Conservatory of Music, so we were always surrounded with a lot of musical instruments. Every weekend, we have to get together as family, and in fact, my siblings, they all play guitar and drums, and my dad played clarinet, saxophone, all the windpipe instruments, except piano. He didn't know how to play the piano. But he had some youngsters on weekends. He was teaching all these kids how to play instruments. And he was successful in that. And then I was a member of the choir, so on Sundays, we are in the choir. My dad would play the clarinet and we sing in the choir, my sister and I. We get all the high school kids, probably about 30 of us in the choir.
What was the medical healthcare? Was it hard to stay healthy?
Healthcare, my God, healthcare is bad in the Philippines. Yeah, in fact, when I was playing softball, I could hit the ball, but I can't run to the bases. So what our coach did was, I hit the ball, somebody ran for me, because I was so short of breath. But little did I know that I had a heart murmur. We found that out when I was in nursing school. So as a child, I always had this heart murmur. We found out now, later in life, when I came to this country, that I had a narrowing mitral stenosis, which is residual from when I was little. I had a high fever, and that created a residual in my valve, my mitral valve.
How did the Japanese invasion affect your life?
Yeah, I remember some parts of it, but growing up, that really interrupted my life because the Japanese invaded the Philippines, and of course I didn't know. I was young, but bits and pieces I remember. I don't remember how we traveled from the city to the mountain. All I know was I woke up one morning and we were on a plateau, and my mom was carrying me, and we were in a plateau overlooking the town proper, and I could see the houses burning. That one I remember it so well. But I'm trying to remember how we got there, because we went by foot. My parents carried us. There were only two of us then, my older sister and I. So my dad took my sister, and my mom took me, and then our grandparents were following. We hid in the mountains, and there were some people that guard the ocean side, because they could see the ship coming into town, into the city, and when they hear that, somebody would run to us and give the Japanese are coming in, so we have to move further out of the mountain, out towards the mountain. But yeah, that really, until now, I still have nightmares about that. But slowly, in fact, I was 40 years old when I finally got a chance to interact with Japanese people. I was so scared of them. 1945, I was probably 5 years old then. And the Americans came eventually after 1945. And they were the one who saved us. So we were able to get back to town.
The Japanese never found you?
Oh yeah, in fact, there were some young girls that were abducted by the Japanese, and they kind of raped them. My mom was young because my parents got married in their teens. My mom was 16 and my dad was 17, I believe, when they got married. So they were young, having me and my sister, they were young. What happened was the Japanese caught us, so they lined up all the girls, the women. And I can remember that underneath a tree, they lined up the women, and she pointed, you come with us. So they got the young ones, but my mom grabbed me. And if they know that you are married, then they don't take you. So I saved my mom for holding me. Yeah, so they didn't take her, but all of them, there were a lot of girls that were killed and raped. And I remember a cousin of mine, he was probably in his teen, further down where there were trees. I believe that the Japanese told him to climb up the tree, a tamarind tree, and let him jump down, and they met him with a bayonet. He got killed.
Did you lose any other friends?
My uncle was a member of the army in his early life. My mom's brother, youngest brother, and he was in the army, and he got killed too. Yeah.
Well, looking back on it now, what do you think helped you get through that experience?
Oh my God, we were surrounded with religious people. My aunt, who is a sister of my dad, is a nun. So every time we got problems, she was my mentor. Every night she would teach me how to pray, and my grandparents teach me how to pray too. And she was the one who saved my life, because through prayers, I think it's my faith and their faith that really saved me. It wasn't the best because they were not psychiatrists or something, but they helped me got through that. And being young, I think when I was growing up, I kind of slowly forgot. But now that I'm older, sometimes I think I have PTSD. I can remember, bits and pieces, and I said, well, maybe when I was younger, maybe I should have seen a counselor or something. But now, I feel kind of better. I went through that. I survived the World War II and was able to go to school. I've always wanted to be a nurse or any in the medical field. Actually, the first one was I wanted to be a dentist. But my parents cannot afford that dentistry. So my choice was in nursing. So that's why I became a nurse.
In Filipino culture, there's a big desire to help others. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, well, I see my siblings at that time growing up, my mom was still having kids. Sometimes we slept on the floor, because the bedrooms were not enough for all of us. The family was growing. I'm second eldest of 10 kids. So, when I see my siblings before, I said, there have to be a better life than this, So that was my focus, is go to school and help my parents raise the kids and come abroad, for a greener pasture. So that's how I came to the United States after graduating from school. By the way, I went to 2 schools in pre-nursing. I went to University of the East on my first year, and then second year I went to St. Louis University. It's a Catholic school. And then I had my internship in Pangasinan, which is a University of Luzon. And I stayed there for about 4 years. Manila for 1 year, and then Baguio City for my second year in college, and then I went to the Gupan City in my internship. I really enjoyed that nursing part of my life, school.
How old were you when you moved here?
I was in my early 20s when I moved here. When I graduated in nursing in 1963, I took the board, I passed the board, and then I applied for coming to the United States. In those days, there were some people recruiting nurses from the Philippines that came from the United States, because in those years there were shortage of nurses in the United States. I applied for that, and I was admitted at first at Cook County Hospital in Chicago. That was 1964. Applied for that. I was admitted in Chicago, but unfortunately, when I was admitted in June in Chicago, Cook County Hospital, I didn't have money for my plane ticket. So I waited for the next batch, and I went to work, saved some money, and June, July, August, September, I was able to come again. I still had not enough money for my flight, so I had to go to an agency to finance my ticket. So they call it the fly now, pay later, and that's what I did. I was, when I was working here, I was paying them back though. So that's how I came. And there were 15 of us in that flight coming to the United States. Some of them were going to Tennessee, Kentucky, one from Michigan, and 4 of us went to Philadelphia. That was my first hospital. I was admitted to Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia.
Why did you decide to come to America?
I decided to come to America to have a better life for my family, my siblings. It's a tradition in our culture that if you are one of the eldest in your family, you have to help those other siblings. Talking about coming into the United States, all I had was $20 in my pocket and a suitcase full of nurses' uniform. So anyway, we landed in Philadelphia, and of course we have to take a cab to go to the hospital where we will reside. I had $20, and I found out that the cab charged $20 from the airport to the hospital. So what I did was ask the other girls if they would pitch in and collect $20 from all of us, 4 of us, so we could go to the hospital. Yeah.
Was America what you thought it would be?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. We got to Philadelphia and we were expecting, some modern place that we would live in. They put us in an old building, brick building, which is the old nurses' dorm. They said it's a dormitory, and I had my room. It's a small room with a dresser. And that was it. And we came in on a Saturday, and Sunday we had an orientation in the hospital. Monday we start work. So and I was assigned in a private ward, which is all patients were in a private rooms on the 16th floor of the hospital. So that's where we were. But we had a lot of people, nurses that were ahead of us that came in the year before and the year before that. So there were a lot of us in that big dorm. So anyway, our hardship was, coming from the Philippines, where rice is the staple food, and we didn't have any rice. Whatever they were served in the cafeteria, because we ate in the cafeteria, we didn't like it. We were really unhappy about that. And then after a month, we haven't seen rice in our life in there. Yeah. So we tried to explore, some of my friends, we took the bus. We took the bus and we rode the bus going west. You go miles and miles and miles and it's flat, And you go east, it's the same way. But anyway, we found a place where they were selling some barbecue chicken. They were hanging, I think it was a Chinese restaurant. So we were so happy. We bought chicken, the whole chicken. And we had a lot of things in our bags. And we were coming back to the dorm. We took the bus again. We didn't realize that in those days, you're not supposed to sit in the front of the bus if you're a minority. We didn't know that. Nobody told us. So anyway, here we were with all the bags we were carrying. And we sat right in the back of the bus driver. And everybody was looking at us. Finally, we got to the dorm and we were telling the other girls, who were ahead of us. They said, "You're not supposed to sit in the bus." That's why they were looking at you. We didn't know. Nobody told us anything about that. Then we learned that we were not supposed to sit in the front if you are a minority. Yeah. So in those days, that's how I learned where discrimination was. In the 60s, it was really bad. And even in the hospital, you come in and to work and you are assigned a certain shift. And if you're a minority and you're a newcomer, you cannot work on the day shift. Only the Americans, white people, work on the day shift. But the minorities, they were either nights or evening shift. So I worked in the evening for months and months. I learned a lot of things. We enjoyed. We went out. In Philadelphia, I had my first Thanksgiving with a family that I took care in the hospital. When she went home, they invited us to their house. I remember the name Hessler. Paul Hessler. I never forgot. But anyway, yeah, we enjoyed their Thanksgiving, and unfortunately, my stay in Philadelphia was cut short because one day there was a power outage. It was snowing really hard, and the lights went off. Elevator cannot use it, and so one of my patients needed a medication, which is a controlled substance. So I have to go down as a nurse. You have to go down and pick up your own medication. So I had to go down. I had to run down from the 16th floor to the pharmacy on the basement, which is fine. Running down was no problem. Coming back up, I was so short of breath. And I found a guy, that was working for the elevator. So I told him, would you run that medication, this medication? Give it to the head nurse on the 16th floor because I cannot make it. So I was sitting down on the steps. Slowly I went up, made it to the 16th floor, but it's way, behind time. But the other nurses took care of my patients. So that's the time when my head nurse said, you have to see the doctor. So they referred me to a cardiologist. I was having atrial fibrillation. My heart rate was really fast. So this was just a few months after I got there, I think before Christmas, after I got to Philadelphia. And so I went to see the doctor and told me that I was having atrial fibrillation, that I need to be evaluated. I have to go through this and that and that. So I talked to the nursing supervisor and said, we won't cover. I didn't realize that I didn't have any coverage insurance-wise. So they were charging, I think about $600 or something like that. I didn't have the money, I was making $119 per pay period, which is about 2 weeks. So that's only about $400 a month. Not even. They told me I have to quit the program, my contract there. You have to quit the contract. And, either you go home or you go where you have relative family in the United States. So that's how I got to Seattle, to Uncle Dick. I stayed with them. I came here and I had to go for evaluation at the hospital. I went to University of Washington. I was sent by a cardiologist there. And he said, you need to go for cardiac cath. You need to find out how far the valve is narrowing. So they told me that, I needed such and such money. They had done it with the condition that I'll pay them back monthly. So that's what I did. And when I was in the hospital, that's where I first saw your grandpa. The Filipino community president came to see me with his wife, and your grandpa was driving them, but I didn't know him then. They came and saw me, and they live in Yakima, but they came to town just to see me because they were friends with Uncle Dick and Grandpa Taffy, my grandfather. That's the first time I saw your grandpa, but nothing formal, I was not even introduced to him, but he just saw me in my worst time, in the hospital, and next thing I know, a few days later, I was getting letters from him. I saw you, I heard about you, and blah, 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 all kinds of things. And he was good in writing letters. He was skinny and short. I thought he was a kid. So I thought, what will I do with him? So anyway, that's how it started, knowing him. But he was so persistent, And I went to see an attorney because I needed to work so I could pay my bill in University of Washington. So they changed my status to a student working visa. They have to cut off my contract from the Philadelphia. They changed it to a student visa, working visa. My first job here was in a nursing home. There used to be a nursing home, a big nursing home on Dearborn, where they used to have the baseball team. That's where they had the nursing home. So I worked there for a while I am paying for my, monthly bills. And then after that, I said nursing home is not for me. So I went to Providence Hospital. I worked there for a few months. I met the Senator Magnuson, and he was my patient. And so I talked to him, and I said, well, I need a job somewhere, and a better paying job. So he said, well, you can go to, I think, Doctor's Hospital. He knew somebody at the Doctor's Hospital. So I moved to Doctor's Hospital. So I worked at Doctor's Hospital. I moved again. I went to St. Cabrini Hospital, and I worked there for 10 years. And I went to Cabrini another 10 years. Oh, I also worked at U.S. Public Health for 10 years. But anyway, Cabrini was my last assignment here.
After Papa wrote you those letters, how did you end up?
Well, okay. Before Christmas, she came to the house where I was living, Uncle Dick, and she wanted to go out. So I said, okay, that was the first time we went out. So we went out, but I knew that she had a girlfriend too. And I said, what about your girlfriend? He said, well, forget her, I stood her up. He stood her up, and here we were driving around 15th Avenue, close to Beacon Hill. We were going to Chinatown. So we went to Chinatown, and lo and behold, the girl with her uncle were driving, and we were, meeting. So your grandpa said, duck, you duck, because Deli was there with the uncle. The bad part was, my uncle and her uncle were working together in the same company. So they talk about Greg, your grandpa, that her uncle was bad-mouthing your grandpa, you don't like him because he's a drunk and he's this and that, and she's going out with my niece, So Uncle Dick was mad at me, you better, cut off everything with that guy, he's sad and such. But your grandpa was so persistent. He wanted to get married. And here I was applying for Canada because I have friends in Canada that I wanted to work with. But anyway, I wanted to go to Canada because I was admitted, and I applied in Canada at a children's hospital. So I was going to Canada. Okay, I went to Canada. I'm going to Canada. Your grandpa, I want to get married. And she wanted to get married. And I said, when did you get married? January, March. We got married in March.
So how long did you know him before you got married?
December, January, February, March, about 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah, we went out a couple times, but he comes and visit in the house. But then it come to the point that Uncle Dick didn't want him to come and visit. Oh my God! Yeah, it was an ordeal. But at that time, I made up my mind. I said, either I go to Canada or stay here. So your grandpa said, why go to Canada? You're already here. Why do you go to Canada in a strange country and blah, blah, blah. So we got married in Yakima.
So where did you live after that? After you got married, where did you?
After we got married, we had an apartment close to where he used to work at the Boeing company in Marginal Way, Georgetown. We had an apartment there, with a nice swimming pool. And after 4 months, we decided to buy a house. We bought a house in Beacon Hill. They were building it when we saw it. We bought that house, and 2 years later, I had your dad. After your dad was 2 years old, I think your dad was 2 years old, my dad wanted to come, and I wanted to take them here too. Because, life in the Philippines is really hard, especially when you have a lot of siblings. I filed a petition for my dad. In those days, it's really easy. In 3 months, it was approved. So my dad came, stayed with us for a while. A year after I got married, my sister came, and she went to Chicago. Your Grandma Flor was in Chicago. She told me, I can take over Dad. You can send him over to Chicago. So he went to Chicago. And he was there for a while, but then they wanted to come here to stay here. Your Auntie Flor came for a visit, and she loved Seattle. So they decided to move here. On the other hand, a year after my dad came, my mom came with the rest of the siblings, like Uncle Mario, Edgar, the younger ones, except Lenny. Your Uncle Lenny was married, so he wasn't able to come. When my mom came, my dad was working also in a nursing home. When my mom came, she went and worked at hotel. He works for the hotel. So little by little, they accumulated some money and they rented their own house in the South End. The kids growing up, they decided to buy the house for the house now where Orlando is living now. That was their house. So that's how my family came, I petitioned them, and fortunately it was easy to get everybody then. And then on your grandpa's side of the family, we have to petition them too. Grandpa Cesar, your grandpa's brother, came over and did the same thing, petition for his family, so they're also here. So that's a lot of people that we got here, and they all have their own houses, and they went to school. The kids went to school. Everybody had their own lives now, and now I'm old.
So you were the first one of your family to leave to come to the U.S.
I was the first one, except my grandfather was here in 1924, but they were farming. They were in Yakima, and they didn't do anything about their family, except my uncle Dick was the one that came. The rest of the family, nobody. But I was in my family, my siblings, I was the first one who came.
Taking care of the Escuela kids and other cousins, what was that like?
Yeah, in fact, when they moved here from Chicago, they decided to move here from Chicago. And they came for a visit first. And going back to Chicago, Raul didn't want to go back. Raul, I think, was 9 years old. And he lived with us for a year. Went to school with your dad, Your dad was a lot younger, but at least he had company. So, and then, since then, your uncle Raul never went back to Chicago. She lived here until now. But yeah, the family got bigger. My sister came, and we're all here. And well, one brother is in Hawaii, and all of them are, your Uncle Kelly, Auntie Flor, Auntie LG, and I are the only ones that live here. Everybody's in California. But when we were having kids, my friends were having kids too. Especially my friends in the nursing school. So until now, I communicate with my friends from nursing school. And in fact, we have reunion every now and then. And our kids know their kids. Your dad knows their other kids. So until now, I get in touch with my friends. I have a lot of them. But of course, I choose my friends.
Right. Looking back on everything, what would you consider some of your greatest accomplishments?
Well, my greatest accomplishment, I guess, was bringing everybody here and helping your dad and your aunt and Tita have their own life,
Yeah. Helping family.
And family, they have their own family, and I'm so happy that my grandkids are very good. They're smart, and everybody is good and smart and very loving. My only regret is your papa didn't get to see you. Yeah, she never saw you guys. You could have been spoiled. Yeah, but I think I don't have any regrets, coming to the United States. The fact that I was able to get my family, have their life improved, better life over here. I did my best. I don't have any regrets. Yeah.
What is the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your life?
Valuable lesson is, I think, I know patience and respect are the best. I learned so much respect, meeting a lot of people, friends, and especially living in a dorm. When I was in the dormitory for 4 years, I met a lot of people with different personalities, and that tested my patience. I don't have any problem getting along with anybody. You know, no matter what kind of personality they have, you cannot change a person, you know. You just have to adjust. And faith is number one. Don't forget God. Yeah, that's what's keeping me. My strength, my sanity, God. As long as you have God in your life, it's number one. Yeah.
Lola has always been like another grandma to me especially because my family's all from the East Coast. So whenever we have Grandparents' Day functions, I'd always tag along with her, along with the rest of the kids. She also gave me this beautiful bracelet that I still wear. It's special to me because I remember getting it and she was giving gifts to all her grandchildren. And then she came over to me and gave me one too, and that made me feel really special and loved. Lola is a truly wonderful woman who embodies what it means to love a family and care for people. Love you.